Monster Hunter Iceborne is out on PC finally, and man is it a good looking expansion. I've actually benchmarked the FidelityFX options, the Snow and DirectX 12, so stay tuned to the very end for all those benchmarks. Let's move on. 720p low, the 760 is doing wonderful. 70 frames a second, running butter smooth. This is a great setting, my recommended setting actually for the 760. At 720p medium, the 760 drops drastically to 40 frames a second, and I believe this is because the VRAM is only 2 gigabytes and Monster Hunter Iceborne is a VRAM hog. 720p high, dropping down about 35 frames a second, still playable, but it's getting a little bit rough and stuttery. Highest settings, completely unplayable. Moving on. 1080p, the 1080 Ti and 970 are enjoying very high frame rates, very smooth. The 760 is barely in the running at 44 frames a second. Maybe with some tuning you could get some smooth gameplay out of it. 1080p medium, the 970 is now dropping to 56 frames a second, still perfectly playable. With a little bit of tuning you could easily get a rock solid 60 out of the 970. So 1080p high, around all of the graphics cards are performing just about the same as they were on medium. However, that 760 is now pretty much unplayable at 29 frames a second. 1080p highest, the 1080 Ti is still doing great at 73 frames a second. Meanwhile, the 970 is struggling and the 760 is completely unplayable. Forget about it. Surprisingly enough, at 1440p low, the 970 and 1080 Ti are sitting around the same frame rate. Very interesting. Moving on to 1440p medium, the 970 is now put into its place firmly by the 1080 Ti sitting at 38 frames a second. More of the same with high settings, with a general frame rate loss of about 4 frames a second. Highest settings, the 1080 Ti is now below 60 frames a second. Very surprising to see with only 1440p. And the 970 is completely unplayable. Finally, onto 4K benchmarks. Now, I only had the 1080 Ti on this because the 970 was just not enough for 4K on any settings. Sorry to say that, but that's how things go. Low settings, 92 frames a second. I believe this is higher than 1440p. I'm not sure how, but that's how it is. Medium settings sees a dramatic drop down to 44 frames a second. High settings sees 38 frames a second. And finally, highest settings sees 34 frames a second. This is playable, however, it's not a very good experience. I do have some recommended settings, which will have it a solid 63 frames a second. They're on the screen right about now. As you can see, it's mostly low to medium settings. You can tune this yourself. I'm not going to force you into some certain settings. A good thing to note is to add FidelityFX that will boost your frame rate by around 10 to 20%. It really depends on your graphics cards and what kind of settings you're using in the game. I didn't really see a dramatic loss in quality either, so there's almost no reason to not have FidelityFX on. Very surprising. And finally, I have the snow effect. Now, lowest to highest settings, I only saw a couple frames a second difference, while the highest setting looked so much better than that lowest setting. Even in the big fights, where there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of snow getting moved around, the frame rate drop was barely negligible. And here they are all side by side looking very good. I think this is one of the best looking features of Iceborne. If you can sacrifice on some other settings, this is definitely worth it. Really brings in the immersion, really makes you feel like you're in an icy cold environment. And that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Steven. I hope you will tune in next time for some more amazing benchmarks and tech videos. See y'all later.